Shana Tova. I want to start with a very personal note, which is that I'm very, very happy tonight that my friends Tracy Moore and Rabbi Lisa Edwards are here with us. Give a little wave. And they have been holding down high holidays at Beit Chaim Hadashim in Los Angeles, the world's first LGBT synagogue, for the last 26 years. And Lisa retired, and this first year that they're not in their home synagogue, they came to be with us. So thank you for being with us. Tonight, I want to share a story about a shofar. And if you were here on Rosh Hashanah morning, you've already heard part of the story. In the weeks leading up to Rosh Hashanah, I got a message from my friend Alex Tan, who, are you here, Alex? He said if he finished packing, he would come. I expected that he wouldn't finish packing. Alex is a young activist who used to work at JICA, that's how I know him, at Jewish Youth for Community Action. And he had been at Standing Rock, and now he'd been invited to go to Mauna Kea, where indigenous Hawaiians and allies are protecting that sacred site from the construction of a giant telescope. Alex said he'd be arriving on Mauna Kea on Yom Kippur, and he was thinking about two questions. First, how to incorporate his own practice of Yom Kippur into his time on the Mauna. And second, he wanted to bring a gift that would come from his culture to offer the protectors of the site. And the idea of the shofar quickly emerged as the right messenger. It was a symbol and a practice of our people that Alex could bring both for his own practice and as a gift offering. So I went to Afikomen, and I spent time with many shofarot looking for the one that wanted to make the journey. Some might say too much time, given my to-do list at this time of year. But I went and I spent time and I listened to their sounds and I felt their weight in my hand and I told them what we had in mind. And one small shofar stood out. And that shofar was here with us on Rosh Hashanah. And it was an essential part of our fulfillment of the mitzvah to hear the voice of the shofar. And its little body filled this room with its cry. And as the shofar alerted us to be more awake, we also imbued it with our blessings, to carry our blessings and us with it to the Mauna. Blessed with our sacred practice, blessed on one of our holiest days, blessed with our gratitude for being free to enact our sacred rituals, blessed with our solidarity for the people on the Mauna protecting their sacred place and practice, blessed with our widening understanding that our practice here and their practice there are distinct pathways, but they both lead to the same one who we name every day in the Shema. Blessed in these ways, the shofar came to Alex, and he and I discussed teachings about the shofar and the meanings of the calls, and he practiced sounding it so that the same calls that are heard in every Jewish community scattered across the world could also be heard on Mauna Kea. Alex received the shofar with awe and humility that I felt too. We both felt reverence for that shofar and for its power to connect us to wider and wider circles of love and respect for the earth and its beings. And tomorrow, God willing, Alex will sound the shofar on Mauna Kea and offer it as a gift to the protectors there. And somehow this little shofar opened me up as I felt it reconnecting us to our own ancestors and at the same time, connecting us to a very different community across an ocean. Somehow this little shofar was both an ancient relic and also uniquely of this moment, an instrument that could only come to life in this way right now. This is what I want to invite you to explore with me tonight. This powerful connection between our ancestral teachings and the unprecedented moment we're living in. All around us, every day, we can feel the stakes getting higher. We can feel that we're in a new time, a different kind of time. We can feel the waters rising around us as the ice melts and the seasons fluctuate in ways we've never seen before. Capitalism is cracking under its own gilded weight. The gods of extraction and domination are showing themselves to be empty idols. We're in a swirling and unpredictable unfolding of great and global change. These changes are threatening the existence of innumerable living beings and living systems, including the planet itself. But it's not only the threats that are unprecedented. This is also a time of unprecedented and rapidly expanding possibilities. Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi, Zichrono Livracha, used to teach that each of the world's spiritual traditions is like an organ in the human body, in the body of humanity, and that the traditions are collaborative, not competitive, and the body needs them all to be healthy and vibrant in order to work well. And sometimes I imagine that it's not just that each of our traditions is needed to keep the body of humanity alive. I don't quite have the metaphor yet, but it's like our future is just on the other side of a great glass door, and we can see through it, but the door is locked. And the lock isn't a simple lock, but a complex one that needs many different keys to open it. And I imagine that each of the world's traditions is holding one of the keys to that lock. And it's only when all of us come to that great glass door, each with our unique keys, that together we'll be able to unlock it and to find our way to a more balanced, more compassionate world. I imagine a great assembly of all the world's spiritual and wisdom traditions sitting outside the glass door, collaborating to figure out how we make all of the keys work together to open the lock. We don't yet know how our key will fit. We may not even know yet what our key looks like. But this coming together of all of humanity's wisdom and teaching, it's never been possible before. It's only been for an instant in human history that we've had such deep access to each other's cultures and spiritual practices and ancestral wisdom. For the first time, millions of people can deeply explore the confluences and tensions among all the world's teachings. And as we have more and more access to each other's wisdom, those confluences can be extraordinary. A striking example of this actually involves Mauna Kea, where an astronomer and a professor of Hawaiian languages discovered a remarkable connection. Larry Kimura is a professor at the University of Hawaii who's known as the grandfather of Hawaiian language revitalization. He's worked to preserve the Hawaiian oral creation chant called the Kumulipo. Doug Simons is an astronomer who spent his career working on some of the existing telescopes on Mauna Kea. When he heard Larry Kimura's translation of the prelude to the Kumulipo, the creation chant, he found it unmistakably and mind-blowingly aligned with the most current scientific descriptions of the birth of the universe. Here is Larry Kimura's translation of the prologue of the Kumulipo. When fundamental space altered through heat, when the cosmos altered, turning inside out, when the sun was flickering between darkness and light, attempting to brighten the moon, when this complete abyss was dotted with tiny stars, this is rudimentary to begin a space. The source of impenetrable darkness, so profound, a fathomless power reincarnating itself, the miraculous, the dark, the deep, the darkness of the sun, absolute, intense darkness. It is simply darkness, penetrating and fathomless. Like Doug Simons, I recognize the description of the Big Bang in the words of the Kumulipo. But I also recognize something else, the opening passages of the Zohar. The Zohar, a medieval Jewish mystical text, is essentially a midrash, an interpretive commentary on the Torah. It appeared in the 13th century in Spain and was attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived about 1,000 years before that. Here's Daniel Matt's translation of the beginning of the Zohar. A spark of impenetrable darkness flashed within the concealed of the concealed from the head of infinity. A cluster of vapor forming in formlessness, thrust in a ring, not white, not black, not red, not green, no color at all. As a cord surveyed, it yielded radiant colors. Deep within the spark gushed a flow, splaying colors below, concealed within the concealed of the mystery of infinity. It split and did not split its aura, was not known at all until under the impact of splitting, a single concealed supernal point shone. Beyond that point, nothing is known, so it is called Reshit, beginning, first command of all. Both of these descriptions of creation are eerily primordial, using language almost against itself to disrupt the common meanings of the words. Darkness, light, and color fluctuate, and space is turned inside out. The Kumulipo speaks of the darkness of the sun and the cosmos turning inside out. The Zohar says that a single concealed supernal point shone, and that a spark of impenetrable darkness flashed within the concealed of the concealed. Larry Kimura's translation of the Kumulipo echoes these exact words, impenetrable darkness, so profound. How is it that an epic creation chant from the islands of the Pacific, and a Jewish midrash from the other side of the earth, and a contemporary construction of theoretical physics all paint such a similar picture of the beginnings of time? For me, this hints at the possibility of a deeper unity across human cultures and human thinking. The resonance, especially between the Kumulipo and the Zohar, reveals a connection that has existed for centuries, but that was hidden until we gained access to each other's teachings. Who knows what other connections might be revealed as we continue to learn from each other across cultures and spiritual traditions? And how can we recognize those connections if we don't intimately know our own spiritual tradition? So I want to suggest that the mystery of these three overlapping, intersecting visions also points us back to our own Jewish practice, to our own Jewish traditions, whether they're familiar to you or completely strange to you. In this light, we actually have two simultaneous purposes for our practice here. First, our Jewish practice during these days of awe is personal. And second, our Jewish practice during these days of awe is a living, breathing part of the great healing of our world. Our personal practice is to reset ourselves, to reorient ourselves to what matters most, to look at how we contribute to the suffering in the world, to our own and to other people's, and to do the work that allows us to repair the harm that we've done and to learn how to cause less harm in the future. Our practice is to deep clean our spirits the way we deep clean our homes during Pesach. But our practice is not just about strengthening our spirits and clearing our minds. The second purpose has to do with playing our part in the great healing and in the unfolding of creation, even if it is mostly a mystery to us. Our practice is also about keeping alive and transmitting our Jewish practice and becoming intimate with our particular set of instructions so that we can bring our unique key to this great healing, this great assembling of insight and practice that is happening in a way that has never been possible before in the history of humans on the earth. We don't yet know if the healing can happen quickly enough or fully enough, but we know that we have a part to play in trying. When I first learned about the struggle on Mauna Kea in Hawaii over the building of an 18-story tall, 30-meter telescope on a mountain that is the holiest site for indigenous people there, I felt conflicted. I'm understanding more and more the importance of protecting indigenous sacred sites, both for their own sake and as a model for honoring and loving the earth. But I also studied physics in college, and I love physics and astronomy and telescopes and looking at the stars. So I've been learning more about the indigenous fight to protect the mountain and about the giant telescope they're trying to protect it from. It turns out that one of the indigenous leaders of the movement on Mauna Kea, Kealoha Prasata, also studied physics in college and also loves astronomy. And she says about the 30-meter telescope, quote, "We have reached our limit. Science has to accept that there are human limits also," end quote. What I hear her saying is that there's a place for scientific exploration, and Mauna Kea is already home to 13 other telescopes. But there comes a time when the people who hold the mountain to be so sacred can't bear another, bigger, more invasive construction project, even if its purpose is to study the stars. I've heard astronomers talk about the 14,000-foot peak of Mauna Kea as the darkest spot on Earth and the best place on the planet to look out into space and so back into time. I've heard them describe the 30-meter telescope, or TMT, as being able to look 10 times further out into space than any other telescope, which means looking 10 times deeper into the universe's history, 10 times further back into the past. I see the astronomers filled with awe and wonder at the vastness of space, reaching farther and farther out into space and back into time. And I've heard indigenous leaders say, this is our sacred mountain. This is the center of our life. We love it. We care for it. We walk tenderly and respectfully here. This mountain is alive, and it's a God for us. We cannot allow it to be dug up and leveled off, to be scarred and hacked into. We won't allow its sacredness to be disregarded, its aliveness to be denied, its vulnerability to be exploited. The Mauna is the place where the realm of the universe above meets the realm of the earth below. It has been the holiest place of our people from time immemorial. The astronomer says, look up, look far, farther into the distance, deeper into space, back through time, to find out who we are and our place in the universe. The farther we can see into the distance, the more we'll know about ourselves. And the indigenous leader says, look here, at the land under your feet, to the mist on the mountain, to the ocean and the animals. Be quiet, sit still, listen hard, stay and watch for a year, a generation, 100 generations, and we will know who we are and what our place is. And this tension between reaching far out into the mystery and looking right here, right now, it took me right to the Torah, to a passage near the very end of the Torah, which we just read a couple of weeks ago in Parshat Nitzavim. It says, this teaching that I teach you this day, it's not too baffling for you. It's not too far away. It's not in the heavens, lo b'shamayim hi, that you should say, who will go up to the heavens and get it for us and tell it to us so that we can follow it? And it's not across the sea that you should say, who will cross for us across the sea and get it for us and tell it to us so that we can follow it. No, this teaching is close to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart to follow it. See, I set before you life and good, death and suffering. Life and death I place before you, blessing and curse. So choose life so that you and your children and your children's children can live. End quote. What we need is so close to us, in our mouth, in our heart. Way back in the Midbar, in the wilderness, in a time before time, all of our people gathered at the foot of another mountain. Moses went up the mountain and spent many days and nights receiving Torah, receiving instructions for how we can live in balance and alignment. And our tradition teaches that the words of our Torah, the ones that got written down, are only part of the instruction that Moses received. The other part is transmitted orally, from generation to generation, from teacher to student, from mouth to mouth. Our sages taught that even Moses didn't understand the oral Torah he was given. But his job was to transmit it faithfully, because people would come in the future who would need those very instructions that he himself couldn't make sense of. The Midrash even teaches that God had to show Moses through instantaneous time travel, a future teacher whose words of Torah were incomprehensible to Moses. And that Torah that Moses brought down from the mountain has been transmitted, given over into our hands, our mouths, our hearts. And the Torah that we receive and that we teach may be unrecognizable to Moses, or even to some of our parents and grandparents. But it's on us to listen for the teaching that's being revealed to us, to listen hard, to keep our minds and hearts open to both the inherited wisdom of the ages and the emerging wisdom of this moment. As we practice tonight and tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon and into the evening and beyond, wherever you are during those hours and however you practice, The invitation is to open up to how this teaching is moving through you today. What insight arises? What part of you is lifted up? What possibility opens up for you? What is the unique shifting that can only happen when the one and only you-ness on this day meets the teachings of our ancestors? These next 24 hours may include confusion, frustration, aversion, anger. They may include opening, clarity, insight, forgiveness. We are, each of us, climbing a mountain. We don't know what we will encounter. The practice is to pay attention. The practice is to attune our awareness to the still, small voice. The practice is to allow ourselves to be lifted up by each other's practice, by this powerful and empowering community of prayer and ritual and song and tradition. Sometimes I think about the religious Jewish men in Bnei Brak in Jerusalem who made that little shofar. I wonder if any of them imagined that the work of their hands would pass through our community, through our hands, through indigenous hands. I wonder if they imagined that it would come to life with Alex's breath, the breath of a queer Jew of color. I wonder if they imagined that it would scale a holy mountain in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and become part of a great ceremony of protection and love of the earth. They had no way of knowing that the work of their hands would become part of this great healing. I think about how that little shofar connects me and us also to them, keepers of our traditional ways. The gates are open now. May our practice give new life to each of us in the ways that we need, right here, right now. And may our practice help keep our traditions alive and growing, ready to reveal new and unimaginable Torah to us, to our children, and to their children. And may we all be part of the great healing that has never been more needed and that has never been more possible. Ken Yehi Ratzon.